technical topics and business use cases for WebRTC and live video. As always, this episode is brought to you by WebRTC Ventures, leading integrators of WebRTC video into your custom application.
Welcome back to WebRTC Live. And we are going to start today with a little announcement from Dan Jenkins. So let's go to that.
Welcome to WebRTC Live. I'm your host, Arin Sime, founder and CEO at WebRTC Ventures. In today's episode, we'll be talking with Tsahi Levent-Levi. But first, we're going to start with a special announcement from our friend Dan Jenkins, founder at Nimble Ape and Everycast Labs, as well as founder of the ComCon conference series. What's the news, Dan?
Well, thank you for having me. So some people 2 weeks ago or so might have noticed that ComCon is back. So ComCon is back for 2024, but it's a little bit different this year. Usually we go hire out a hotel in the middle of nowhere, and people have to, disappear for 3 or 4 days at a nice country estate. But we thought we'd change it this year. And so we're going on tour. So we are in London, 5th and 6th of June, and San Francisco a week later, 12th and 13th of June. So yeah, absolutely ecstatic about being able to be in the heart of London and San Francisco, being able to be in Europe and in the US, being able to see loads of different people than we usually get to meet. And then we're doing things a little bit kind of different again. So first day is going to be a hackathon, and then second day is all conference. And then the hackathon is going to be a little bit different as well, just because we like doing things a bit different. Sorry. We like doing things a bit different. And so it's going to be a nice, chilled, relaxed thing where you can go hack on some cool APIs that not many people have had a chance to play around with yet. Nice, relaxed, fun, just, getting back to the basics of what a hackathon used to be. No grand prizes, we'll mash the 10 different things together and get prizes from 10 different things. No, we're going to just kind of have fun and build cool stuff. So the call for papers is open, and we're looking for sponsors as well. And on that note, WebRTC Ventures are already a silver sponsor. So thank you very much to WebRTC Ventures.
Our pleasure. Our pleasure. Yeah, it sounds like a great event, Dan. And ComCon always has been. And so I have no doubt it will be still in this new format and with cool hackathon attached to it. So definitely excited about it. You said the call for papers is open now. And
early bird tickets. Early bird tickets. You can go buy a ticket today. So so the London one is £199. £199 for 2 days. It's brilliant value. And then the San Francisco one is $199. So technically it's even a little bit cheaper than London. So yeah, early bird tickets are available today. You can go buy tickets today.
Awesome. All right. So everyone can check that out at comcon.xyz. And thank you so much, Dan, for putting this together. We're looking forward to our team attending, and we're really proud to be a sponsor of the event as well. And thank you for coming on WebRTC Live to share this information with our viewers.
Thank you.
I know it's going to be an awesome event. And if you want to hear more from Dan Jenkins about his work, join us for the April 10th episode of WebRTC Live, where he'll speak with us about broadcasting and WebRTC, and I'm sure we'll talk a little more about ComCon as well. So follow us on socials at WebRTC Ventures. Sign up for our email list at WebRTC.ventures to be sure you don't miss any episodes and announcements about that. So that's it for this pre-recorded announcement from Dan and I. Now let's turn it back over to the live version of me for today's episode with Tsahi.
All right. We are now, in fact, live. If you'd like to meet our team in person, then in addition to the ComCon events that Dan talked about, I'll also be at Enterprise Connect in Orlando on March 27th. I'd love to meet with you there. Just email team@WebRTC.ventures and we'll find a time to meet. So thanks for joining us. live today on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Twitch. And welcome also to any of you watching a replay of today's event. For those of you with us live, you can ask questions throughout the stream by leaving a comment in whichever platform you are viewing this. For today's episode, I'm joined by Tsahi Levent-Levi, leading authority in the WebRTC industry, who I'm sure you already know from his blog at bloggeek.me, which also links to many other projects, including WebRTC Weekly, WebRTC Insights, and WebRTCcourse.com. Thanks for joining me today, Tsahi.
Arin, thanks for having me.
Pleasure to have you, as always. So as we announced last month, you and I are going to do short recorded segments each month on WebRTC Live that'll run at the end of each episode after I speak with my regular guest. But this month, we wanted to have a full-length live conversation, so that you and I can get a few things out of our system, because it's hard for us we have a lot of things to say. It's hard for us to only do that in short segments.
Let me make my head smaller. Yes.
Perfect.
Okay.
We are talking heads, but we don't need them too big, right? My videographer's told me that before. I got to lean back from the camera, so I'll do a manual zoom out here also. Exactly. So that's our goal today. We're going to talk about some changing technology trends in WebRTC, touch on unbundling, CPaaS industry changes with the closing down of Twilio Video, and we'll wrap up talking about WebRTC Security and your new course offering on that. So let's start with a little bit about a little preview, perhaps, of the conversation that you're going to have, your presentation at RTC at Scale next week.
Yep. So RTC at Scale from Facebook, Meta, whatever the company name is. They asked me. So I said, great, I'll go just do a presentation about whatever. It ended up being around like the past and future of WebRTC. So it was taking a pause, looking and deciding where we're headed, but also looking where we're coming from. And at the end, when I started writing that and thinking what this is going to be about, it ended up being about libWebRTC. libWebRTC is the Google library implementation for WebRTC that exists, and it's inside today Chrome and Edge and Firefox and Safari. So all the browser vendors end up using the same code base, which makes this, I guess, the most popular, used, or important implementation of WebRTC out there. So once you start looking at that one and understanding what are the things that have changed in the last year there and where are the things that we see going, it becomes interesting and it makes you understand more where things are headed. So that's a big part of what I'm doing at the RTC at Scale event in my session. Something else that I'm talking about there is unrelated to WebRTC, but very important and related to WebRTC. And that's the fact that we see WebRTC being unbundled. It started somewhere in 2019. I wrote about that in the first time then, with the introduction of WebAssembly and insertable streams and maybe web codecs and maybe web transport. And today all of these almost exist, almost fully there. This unbundling allows us to do a lot of things that we couldn't do before. Let's see if I can find a real quick one here. Yes, definitely. Let's find out. I can do this, which everyone knows how to do. Okay. Just virtual background. And these are things that you can do because of insertable streams and the fact that WebRTC is now trying to give more power to developers and control to do whatever it is that they want. The other part of it is taking bits and pieces of WebRTC, ripping it out of WebRTC and allowing using them independently, like web codecs, that allows you to use a codec and code and decode frame by frame without WebRTC, or web transport that allows you to send data quicker than you could with WebSocket or HTTP, and then build whatever you want on top of that. So you can start looking at different use cases and build them without WebRTC, things that you would have done with WebRTC until today. And the question is what that bode for WebRTC. I think it's also a good segue into Twilio, because video is not really using WebRTC. It uses some of these tools, and they would probably use more of them as they become more stable. And that enables them to compete with vendors that use WebRTC in the browser, but without using WebRTC.
Yeah, so Zoom is essentially doing like an unbundled version of WebRTC. Is that
Yes.
an accurate statement? Yeah.
Yes. If you look at the history, Zoom was founded in 2011. WebRTC was announced in 2011 or 2012, so roughly the same time.
Mhm.
Zoom came from WebEx in terms of the personnel that built that. So their mindset was video conferencing. This is what we know to do. The way you did that then was proprietary media engines. You build them, you stuff things around them, but almost all the innovation and creativity goes into the media engine, not whatever is around that. There was no WebRTC to use at the time, so they didn't use it. They built their own stack, and they kept it with it. They never had to switch to something else because they were quite successful. And then,
And when they built that stack, it was all for desktop initially, right?
yes,
Yeah.
yes, and then you could say they added mobile and stuff, but
Mhm.
and then they add the ability to install a plugin in the browser that gets you that application, which is used until today. Yes, there is a web interface, you can use it. It actually works, but they don't make it easy to use. Like, if you want to actually use the web browser, it's not that easy. So what happens was that you get to 2019, they have a successful IPO. They look, do I need WebRTC? No. The pandemic hits. They became the biggest thing out there. Do I need WebRTC? No. All users already installed Zoom. They're fine with that. Why should I switch? Okay. So they don't need it today in a way. But now that they're coming into the SDK space, well, they do. Because now the one installing the app is actually an end user that doesn't use Zoom, uses a third-party healthcare service or banking service or gaming service, and they don't want to install stuff. And me as a developer don't want to implement an application. I want a web application.
Mhm.
So that becomes a kind of friction that they need to deal with now.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. So it's they're now updating that web API, updating that SDK, starting to catch up. I mean, they had a recent release allowing rendering of video on individual HTML elements, for instance, which is an important thing for having flexible layout options in your screen. You're not as tied to having the same UI, which is, one of the key advantages that any other WebRTC solution has had for a long time, right? But but an indicator of an eventual more equivalence, functional equivalence over time, presumably, as they go after that market. So what do you think this means for other CPaaSs in terms of both just competitive nature as well as the idea of what are they going to do? Will more of them unbundle, for example?
So CPaaS vendors have this challenge. First of all, they need to compete with each other. Now they need to compete with Zoom. They need to explain to their customers that they are still relevant because Twilio is out of the market, but they're not going to leave.
Mm-hmm.
Because if Twilio left, what would us small cockroaches say when the big Twilio is leaving? Should we stay or not? So someone needs to explain our reason to exist.
Mm-hmm.
And then they need to decide if they want to add their differentiation in the same level that Zoom is playing, which means inside the media engine. And then instead of using WebRTC or alongside using WebRTC, use Web Transport and Web Codecs and WebAssembly more. Or would they need to go and say, WebRTC is our tech stack, this is what we're using, and this is what we're going to go with. The only problem with that solution is, as great as it is, and I love it, and I think that's the way to go for many, it means that you rely on someone else, which is Google and LibWebRTC.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so like your roadmap is limited, but by what Google decides to do in LibWebRTC and in WebRTC in the browser itself. So you need to pick and choose which way where you're going to be headed with that.
Yeah.
And it's, at least in 2024, it's not an easy decision to make.
Yeah, for sure. So do you see them becoming a dominant CPaaS, and in a sense, do we necessarily care, kind of the industry overall, if there's an
So
eventual feature equivalence?
again, it's hard to say. Would they become a dominant CPaaS player? I don't know. I'm not sure that in CPaaS, maybe in the domain of video API specifically, which is WebRTC, but without WebRTC. They are very dominant in UCaaS. Everybody knows them. Would developers be willing to use their platform and not some other third party? That's yet to be seen. The fact that Twilio came and said, the replacement for us is Zoom was a surprise. And it was, I think that was the biggest vote of confidence that Zoom could have asked for.
Right.
So
yeah, I think from my perspective, in terms of doing work around custom applications, I think it was a premature choice technically, right? Because it doesn't have the same capabilities that open source projects as well as CPaaSs have in the WebRTC space. It may later on, but at this point, it's premature. I think the entrance of them more into the SDK market is certainly interesting for applications that are sort of like a more meeting-based type of application, because they're so well known in that space. But when you talk about other situations that are, you have to stretch the term meeting to use it there. If say, watch parties around a live stream sports event or something like that, let's say, right? Or telehealth applications, where you have a lot more, yes, it's meeting like, but it's not a meeting, right? And so I think it's a bigger stretch for them to go into that space now. And so that's where I think it's a complicated, from my perspective, not the choice I would have made, but doesn't mean it's the wrong choice for
I'll
some
tell you
people.
what worries me the most. If you remember, they had a security issue at the beginning of the pandemic. It took them, a week, a month, 3 months from beginning to end to become from the worst security offender to the almost most secure video conferencing solution out there. So on an execution level, I haven't seen anything like that. The ability of a company their size, with all of the stress that comes with the pandemic, to be able to execute so flawlessly, so quickly. So they're getting there, yes, but if they actually want to be in that market, they're definitely going to become one of the more aggressive players and a challenge to the rest of the market. That's my view.
Yeah.
For better and for worse.
So let's step back a little bit from them specifically and talk about the Twilio video migration more broadly. And this image is from your WebRTC Insights that subscribers like us get access to, and you've done a great job of cataloging all of the different we replace Twilio type of posts, including ours at WebRTC.Ventures. So there's definitely a lot of options to consider on here. What do you kind of see in this space happening right now? And what are the challenges that you see around the migration with Twilio Video?
So I'm in the process of writing a report around that, around video APIs and what it means. So I'm looking at it from a lot of different angles. Some of it is even here, okay? On one hand, you've got companies like Agora, and let's say who else is there? Microsoft, EnableX, Daily. These are CPaaS vendors or video API vendors. They were in this market. They're going to stay there. That's great. Then you have other competitors that what are they doing? It is less understandable to me. Like Phoenix. Phoenix is doing live streaming. I'm going to have kind of built with WebRTC with them tomorrow, I believe. Then you have Stream, which does signaling. They're not exactly replacements for Twilio in any way. They do something different. Then you have Izon and Digital Samba that have APIs, but they at least came from the domain of software as a service, of UCaaS becoming like an API player, like Zoom in a way, just smaller vendors or less known vendors. And then you have Microsoft. And do we have here the other one? No, we don't have Amazon. They're infrastructure as a service, becoming API, video API vendors. And there is also Nimble Ape and WebRTC.Ventures that build applications for others, providing these outsourcing services. So first of all, the market is more confusing than just saying, well, we've got video APIs, Twilio is not there, now who do we go to?
Right.
Because you have those that started as video APIs, you have those that started as, well, we do CPaaS, voice and SMS, and we're adding video like Twilio did. So the first question, okay, Twilio is not doing that anymore. Are any of the other big CPaaS vendors going to decide to leave because they see more money in video and in voice and SMS, and video is not interesting enough? Okay, that's another question. Then you've got the IaaS players, where I'm not going to pick them because they're great. I'm going to pick them because I'm a startup and they gave me $100,000 anyway, and so I'm going to use that for credits. Or I'm going to pick them because I decided I'm doing everything with AWS, or I've decided that I'm doing everything with Azure. So this is my first option that I'm going to even investigate time in.
Right.
So there are a lot of vendors in the market that are competing on the same space. And in many ways, the question is, do we have too many vendors out there doing video APIs with not enough customers?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that brings up, Twilio Video is the big one that we're talking about right now, but Mux also shut down their video service earlier this year, right? And then, of course, Twilio Video as well. So yeah, I think it's a long list of people that you talk about, and people who are talking about their replacements for Twilio Video, but they're definitely not equivalent to each other. And there's a lot of different factors of why you might choose one over the other, to be sure. I think it's for us, it's a little interesting seeing how this market is playing out right now. Bring up here a timeline that we've recommended to people in our own webinar on Twilio Video migration, and kind of basically urging people by the end of Q1, which is 2 weeks from now, that you should already have kind of assessed the different options out there, done prototyping around that, and make sure that it fits within your business model as well as your technical architecture, right? Because as you mentioned, there's going to be decisions that are very much based on, we want to stay within the AWS stack, or we want to stay with, this particular vendor, or whatever the case may be. There's lots of non-technical considerations that may be factored into it. But then beyond that, also, you've got a lot of other work that has to be done, right? It's not just about dropping in one piece of JavaScript over another. Even if they're feature equivalent on the website, the way that they implement those is not necessarily the same. So you're likely to have technical changes and UI changes that you need to test with your users. Load testing, redo the way you're doing your DevOps, and scaling is very likely, right? So I get a little concerned because we do talk to some people now who say, okay, this is great, makes sense, we'll do it later, which is a very risky proposition because you don't want to discover those things. But then I think you've also told me you've heard some others say kind of the opposite too, that this giving us a year notice was not enough
time.
So we're kind of hearing the whole range of answers on it, which is a little concerning. But
no, at the end of the day,
how upgrades work.
December 2024 will arrive if we want it or not.
Right.
And then we'll see what happens then.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, I guess the last point kind of I want to explore a little bit with you here is around this, there's like a little bit of mixed signals, I think, in the market, right? If we talk about things like Twilio Video and Mux, and maybe there will be others who consolidate or go away in the future. And then on the other hand, architectures like unbundling, which indicates a possible fragmentation in the market and moving away from a single standard in the way it's implemented also, right? So there's some tension going on here, I think, in the marketplace. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so I shared this with you earlier on today. I just drew that this morning or yesterday night. It's something that I did, a visual that I did for the report, trying to explain even to myself what it means for the fact that Twilio decided to leave the market. What does that do to us? Okay, so in this graph, you see on the left-hand side, the buy part. These are vendors that decided, customers that decided that they are going to use a CPaaS platform, a video API platform. The green are those that are using video API vendors other than Twilio, and the red is Twilio. I just took their logo color. Then in the blue, what you have is the new projects. I start a new project. I need to pick a vendor to work with. Should I build my own or use a third-party vendor? Now, let's say that Twilio decided not to announce anything, continue business as usual. In that case, you'll have most of these vendors go and simply go into the stack of buy. They are going to use a platform, be it Twilio or someone else. But Twilio announced this migration that they are doing or the sunset that they are doing, and the world is going to look like that by the end of the year. Some of the vendors in the red that were using Twilio are going to move away to some other third-party vendor, staying on the buy platform, but some are going to shift and be moved aside to the build part. Why? Because they got burned once or even twice, and they decided that's enough, and we're going to own the technology now on our own. Why? Because their fear of the fact that whoever they are going to use isn't going to be good enough or going to sunset their platform tomorrow. Then part of the projects that there were before here, these are going to well. Why? Because they thought of using Twilio and saw them die out, or they know that there is turmoil in the market and unease, so why should I go and risk my project with that? So in a way, the video market might not diminish, or the interactive video market might not go down in size, but out of that market, the pie that is going to be there for the video APIs is going to be smaller than it could have been if Twilio was there. So the fight that you see between vendors today is mostly on the customers of Twilio than anything else.
Yeah. It is something that we're seeing across the work that we do. This range of options of I'm just going to switch to a different CPaaS vendor. I'm going to switch to an open source solution, as well as some work where I'd like an abstraction layer so that I can do both, either across multiple CPaaS vendors or open source and CPaaS, and have failback solutions, which obviously more complicated, but also reflects that concern about potential turmoil. So as I've spent too many years in consulting to be able to avoid saying something like it depends, or there's no wrong or right answer here, but there's a lot of truth to that. These are complicated decisions to make, which again is why I think this shouldn't be done, shouldn't be delayed between us, until December. So, all right, I want to just show a couple of quick resources for those who are looking at replacing Twilio video, then we'll move on to our final segment today. There are a couple of interesting things. So this Friday, there will be a 100 milliseconds webinar on replacing Twilio for telehealth. Twilio for telehealth, that's harder to say than I thought it would be. With GM and VP, the former GM and VP for Twilio video. So that's one thing you can check out. Also, there are a lot of great resources out there. We've mentioned before, I think one of the excellent ones is Daily wrote a really comprehensive one that talks about the different features and considerations you need to have when leaving Zoom. They've also done a telehealth webinar. And then, of course, we have our own content up at WebRTC.Ventures. You can see the webinar we did back in January about all the different factors you can consider in migration work. And then also we're going to be very soon on our blog, you'll see us release a new migration guide for Twilio video to Amazon Chime SDK. So these conversations are certainly going to continue until December, probably. And hopefully no one is calling us on December 1st to get started for the first time, but we'll see. So anyways, let's go on to another topic here, to our last topic for today, and talk about WebRTC Security. So you've got a course you're releasing on that. Tell us a little bit about
Yeah.
that.
This is something that I wanted to do for so long. I think it was 5-6 years ago, I thought that I need to do something around security. It started with a small thing of like a checklist, 6-7 items you can find on my website somewhere. It wasn't enough at any point in time, not even when I wrote it. And then I think half a year ago, I finally decided it's time to make an ebook. Let's do an ebook about security. But I decided to make it actionable, which means that each item in that ebook would be actionable. You get like a title, a description of what the problem is, how to solve it, and what are the best practices in that domain. Not wanting to do things alone, I pinged Philip Henke, who's my partner in crime for a lot of things, and told him, well, I'm going to do a WebRTC security ebook. He said, great. I didn't sound like he was very enthusiastic. So what I did was tell him, these are the topics. This is a table of contents, still wasn't that enthusiastic. So what I did was say, let's write 2 sub-chapters, just 2 best practices in there. He looked at that. Then he started, putting his own comments, and I told him, okay, so we're doing that. He said, yes. And then we ended up writing an ebook that has 30-something different items with best practices in them around media, signaling, end-to-end encryption, UI and UX, different types of clients, all dealing with security and then also privacy. And we finished writing it about a month ago, which is a long time. Then I Philip probably told about that to Serge Lachapelle, the original product manager for WebRTC. He said, can I read it? I said, only if you put comments and give us nice forward. So we did both. So we have a forward from Serge Lachapelle in the ebook. But then it dawned on me that we can actually do a course around that as well. So each chapter also becomes, each best practice becomes an actual lesson within a course. We're halfway through creating the course content, which is a bit more comprehensive than the ebook, along with recording it. And we're in the second half now. The ebook is now in final steps of design. It should be available today or tomorrow. The ebook will immediately go to the WebRTC Insights clients, and then the course would go into the larger developer courses that I have, and also a standalone along with the ebook. I'm keen to hear what people actually say when they open that and read it, because the way we did it was in a way that every company that uses WebRTC in any way, either directly, indirectly through a managed service, building on their own, using open source, whatever, just going through that and making sure that you're doing things correctly and making the right decisions for your own application even, that would be really beneficial. So that's where we are now with this course.
That's great. I think it is a much needed piece of content for sure. Can you give us any examples of what one of the best practices might be or about?
Well, check LinkedIn. Every week I find something that happens on the web that we mentioned, and it's nice. I think the last one that was out there was the story that Germany had the conference call, and then Russia decided to tap into that call and share that information publicly about missiles that they are going or not going to give Ukraine.
Right.
And it was said that WebEx is to blame because they used WebEx for the call. Somewhere in there, you could have find that in different places. But the thing is, that's not true. It was because someone dialed in through PSTN from a hotel. And then, you're now in regular telephony, tapping lines that have no security in them, while you're thinking that you're using a high security platform with privacy called WebEx. So one of the things that we have in our course in the part of end-to-end encryption is, if you're going to use end-to-end encryption, Make sure that you disable things like PSTN connectivity and gateways, because gateways are going to kill end-to-end encryption no matter what. So that was an obvious one. Not really obvious, but just saying that you need to think about that and do that.
Right.
Another one, let's see. Just how do you keep track of libWebRTC? If you build your own native application, mobile, desktop, whatever, you're going to use libWebRTC. What does it mean to keep track of libWebRTC? Where do you find the security patches? How to search for them? Okay, and then what should be the way you need to model on your own the actual development processes that you have there in place in order to maintain security over time, not just write the applications, yes, we're done, and throw that away. This doesn't work with WebRTC, and it doesn't work with security in general. So that's another one.
That's interesting. Yeah. So in terms of the conference call in Germany, it worked as designed, basically.
Yep.
In the sense that
Exactly.
it's PSTN connected. So classic security issue there. So speaking of security, there was one other thing I wanted to highlight here. Let me get to the correct slide. There it is. So this also came from my attention through one of your WebRTC Insights updates. This article back, and this was a zero-day vulnerability discussed back in December. And in terms of misattribution of where the problem is, this was interesting, and Fippo pointed this out in the Insights. So in the beginning of this article, it says that Google just disclosed a zero-day vulnerability in WebRTC, which is being exploited in the wild to achieve remote code execution, which sounds terrifying. Read on a little bit later, and it talks about the bug was actually in Chromium specific WebRTC, in other words, not in the standard, and so kind of in an implementation of it or implementation around it. And so, when we talk about things like end-to-end encryption or built-in encryption in WebRTC, it doesn't mean much if you leave the gateway connection available, or you write your password on a Post-it note. All those sorts of classic security mistakes still apply.
Yes.
But yeah. Anyways, did you have any other thoughts on this? And I'm curious too, like from your perspective, does a security misattribution, in this case, if I can call it that, do you feel like that's, for me, reminds me of IP address leakage complaints about WebRTC, which again is kind of a misunderstanding or misapplication here. I mean, unbundling might even make this work, right?
I think it's different. So if you go to the previous one, I would say, when I worked years ago at Radvision, we licensed open source stacks, no, not open source, but commercial stacks for protocols. The moment there was a change in the protocol, all the developers were like, "Oh no, not again! We hate it." And then the manager would come in and say, "Why? This is great. It means that we have work and customers." So about this one, I would say, we have work and customers. Me and Philip Henke doing WebRTC Insights, because who is going to actually go and figure out each and every one of these bugs, what's the reason, and what to do with them? So yes, it's murky waters. It's really hard to understand. Sometimes you don't know what the vulnerability is. Sometimes these bugs don't even show up as vulnerabilities in security, so they won't have a CVE, but they actually affect either security or privacy, one of the two. So figuring that out means that you need to spend the time and effort in doing that, and that should be part of the development process that you have, just like you're doing any other things that require maintenance over a long period of time. Now, the second one, the IP leak, it's like, what are you going to do? Explain people that if I want to connect peer-to-peer to someone, I need to know his IP address, otherwise I can't send him a packet. So what else can I say?
Right.
Okay, so you might want privacy, but then don't talk to anyone because you can't. And it's not, by the way, I'm joking about that, but it's not that there are no means available to do that. But the question is, what is it that you want to achieve? Do you want to achieve privacy from the service provider? the one giving you the service, which is mostly end-to-end encryption.
Mhm.
I want to be able to connect to others without someone on the internet other than us knowing about this conversation. That's one. The other one is I want to talk to someone random, but I don't want him to know who I am and harass me. Think about dating.
Mhm.
Okay, so in a dating app, I might not want to give my IP address to anyone else. And
Right.
there is reasoning behind me wanting to hide that. And there are ways and means to do that in an application. But it starts from saying, okay, what am I looking for? What's security for me and what's privacy for me? And again, it's part of the ebook and course.
Mhm. We do have a question around, so kind of going back to that PSTN scenario. Is there a way that could have been made secure and kept PSTN, or just turn it off?
Yes.
Nothing else to do.
Again, it depends. If you want, you get the security of PSTN because that's the security you get. You want a solution over that, do something there. I'm not an expert there, but that would entail putting hardware on both ends that would add the encryption that is missing to what it is that you're trying to achieve.
Mhm.
It's easier to just go and install the WebEx client in this case and not use the phone in a hotel.
Right. Makes sense. All right. Well, Tsahi, I think we're at about the end of our time here, but really appreciate the conversation with you as always. And just a reminder to our viewers that Tsahi and I will be doing segments at the end of each future episode. So make sure you stick around those. We'll be talking about anything from LLMs to WebRTC standards to maybe science fiction we might even cover in some of these. Who knows? So our viewers can also you can message me on LinkedIn if you have a question that you want Tsahi and I to cover in a future conversation. Don't hesitate to reach out to either one of us. And any closing remarks on your part, Tsahi? How can people learn more about your work and the security course?
Just go to Blog Geek Me, subscribe there, or follow me on LinkedIn. Both will work.
Perfect. It's not too hard to find you out there. So, all right, perfect. Thank you, Tsahi. Really appreciate your time today. Thanks again for joining us, and see you next month.
Thanks, Arin. Bye.
Bye-bye. All right. As always, this video will be available on the WebRTC Ventures YouTube channel, as well as on our blog at WebRTC.ventures. Our next WebRTC Live episode will be Wednesday, April 10th with Dan Jenkins from Everycast Labs talking about broadcasting in WebRTC. So to find out more about upcoming episodes, follow us on social media at WebRTC Ventures on Twitch, LinkedIn, YouTube, and join our email list at WebRTC.ventures. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today. Let's make...
Wait, there's one more thing. Okay, I have one more announcement to make today, but admittedly, it's not quite as exciting as a VR headset. But I'm still excited about it, and if you're also going to Enterprise Connect, then let's meet up. I'll be at the Enterprise Connect conference in Orlando on Wednesday, March 27th. I'd be happy to meet with you and talk about the intersection of video, voice, AI, and the contact center. Just email team@WebRTC.ventures and we'll find a time for us to meet. See you in Orlando.
Thanks for joining us for WebRTC Live. Visit our website at WebRTC.ventures to learn more about our custom design and development services and to learn more about upcoming episodes of WebRTC Live.